Hey guys, thanks for joining me today on how to lead your business with listings. We're going to have two different segments to this. The first segment of it is going to be Ben Kinney's system for selling, where we're going to talk about who we're meeting with and what their excitement level is and kind of how to gauge and react in those situations. And then I'm going to talk about 10 different places that you can find leads and talk about how those might be relevant for your business, whereas a different lead source might be relevant for someone else's. So just so you know, in case you don't know me yet, my name is Rebecca Green. I work at the ED Waters Network, and I have a history in being a listing agent. So that's what I did for a couple of years on a large team in Springfield. My highest year, I sold right around 150 houses. And so I've been on a heck of a lot of listing appointments and have a lot of experience in this whole lead with listing situation. So I'm excited to tell you what I know. I'm excited to learn from you all as you give feedback in the future after you watch this video. So to start with, we're going to go over Ben Kinney's system for selling. One of the most important things whenever you go on a listing appointment is to be able to gauge the excitement of the person that you are meeting with. So how we're going to do that is I want you to pretend whenever you're going on a listing appointment that you have a piece of paper in front of you. And for me, I literally took my notebook with me everywhere I went. And so I had a piece of paper in front of me. And these categories we're going to talk about, you would rank the person's excitement kind of on a level of 1 to 10. 1 means not excited at all. 10 would mean I'm so excited to be listing my house. Let's go right now. So as you rank these people, at the end, we're going to go back and be able to look at these categories and tell, is this person going to sell their house with me or not? Not based on what they're actually telling us, but based on the rankings that we've given them. So we'll hit that, and then we'll talk about where you're going to get your listings from. So the first thing that we would do is we would rank the person's excitement. Here's some questions that you're going to ask yourself. 1, how excited is this person to take action today? Is this a today thing? Is this a tomorrow thing? Is this a 6 months down the road thing? So how excited is the person for today? What made the person want to meet with you today? Is it because I called a for sale by owner and I told them I had a buyer? Is it because they called the ISA department? They have a house they want to look at. So why are they meeting with me today? And again, not tomorrow, not a week from now. Why didn't they call yesterday? So if you can analyze what that is, you're going to be ahead of the game. Also, whenever you're selling people's houses, typically there is a partnership involved. You've got a husband and wife or something along those lines. And you need to make sure that you know what individually each person is excited about. So very rarely are they equally excited, but your job as a listing agent is to make sure that you're connecting with both of them. So in your notes, you want to gauge the excitement level of each person. And it's going to be your job that you get the least excited person up to this level. And the excited partner, the excited spouse is always going to appreciate you feeding into the person that's less excited. So make sure you understand what excites both of them. And another thing that you can kind of think about on gauging a person's excitement is to help them understand and ask the question, what selling their property would actually do for them. So in Ben Kinney's system of selling, he doesn't always just talk about houses, he talks about selling any type of product. So think about what your services would actually do for this person as compared to maybe another agent, another real estate team, or selling a house for sale by owner, something like that. So their excitement, I want you to gauge it on your piece of paper if we're at a pretend listing appointment from 1 to 10 to figure out how excited they are based on asking those questions. So the second thing you're going to think about is what is their need in this situation. So let's use an example of, let's say I have a seller that maybe it's a friend and we're going over to check their house out because they're driving too far to work. So that listing appointment is going to be a little bit softer, because if you called and you asked the person, hey, do you want to move? They might be like, I don't really want to move. I love my house. But you call and you ask that person, hey, would you like to be able to attend your child's soccer games because you're driving too far from where you are now? You're not able to get from work back to your kids' soccer games. Their motivation is going to be a little bit different. So analyzing the actual need and being able to choose their need, like whenever they're talking to you, they may say things like, I'm not really ready to sell. I don't really want to sell yet. That's fine. They're not telling you they're not going to put their house on the market with you. They're telling you the home itself isn't the problem. You need to dig a little bit deeper and figure out what their problem is. So let's just go over some examples of what need might be. In the example I gave where the person is missing kids' soccer games because their commute is too far, a good question you might ask to analyze the need is cutting your commute down by 30 minutes important to you? That's a very different question. It gets a very different answer than, do you want to sell this home that you thought you were going to live in forever? So when we're analyzing the need product here, we're again going to rate their need on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's really important that you figure out what that exact need is and why you're at the listing appointment. I'm not at that person's listing appointment who needs to move because of soccer, because they actually want to sell their house. I'm at that person's listing appointment because they don't want to miss their soccer games. So once you find out what that need is, you can hone in and go, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is that need? Some questions that you can ask around that rating scale for just the need portion would be, how would this service change the person's life? Example, they can make it to their kids' soccer games. Is there a pain created if it doesn't change? Yes, there is, because they're not moving and they're going to continue to miss the soccer games. But again, if you're asking the wrong question and you think the need is actually just that they sell their house, the pain really isn't created, because I'm not in pain that I don't live in this current house. I am in pain that I don't get to go to the soccer game. So hopefully that's a good example so you can kind of understand the need that people have. It takes a lot of practice to be able to identify people's needs and ask good questions, which we could have a whole mastermind session about that. But hopefully that's something to think about. So 2 of the things you're ranking, 1 is the excitement, 2 is the need. Something else that's really, really important on a listing appointment is gaining trust. I know a lot of the people on our team work specifically with their sphere. It's important that your sphere trusts you. A lot of you really work off of referrals. So the trust maybe is a little bit more intrinsic than as we're starting to work these new ISA leads. Those people don't know you from me or me from you. So it's so important that you establish trust whenever you're meeting with somebody that's that doesn't have any idea who you are. So again, we are going to rank on our piece of paper how much this person trusts me. 1 is they don't trust me at all. 2, I've totally earned their trust by the end of it, and they would go jump off a bridge with me if I told them it was going to be fun. So here's some questions to ask yourself so you can really rank where on this trust scale they are to figure out if you're going to get their listing or not. Here's some questions. 1, do they believe that what I'm saying is relevant to them? 2, do they believe that what I'm saying is true? People are going to have different measurements for truth, but if it's not something that you've looked up or looked into, how you speak to someone is really important. Mirror matching is really important. They always say that people trust people who are like them. I forget what that saying is, but I'm sure you all can think of it right now. So if you say the word cool, sweet, great, I'm going to speak that way. If you speak in a more professional manner and it's more of a professional appointment, I'm going to mirror match you that way. And that's a really good way to build trust. Another thing that builds trust in real estate are numbers. Homes are people's biggest investment, and whether or not the person knows it, numbers are important, and numbers are a really, really good way to build trust. It's also a really fast way to dissolve trust. So it's important that you are able to do the math. And one of the biggest ways that you can build trust with someone, so on this scale, if they were a 1 because you didn't know them at all, and now they're a 10, is to revert back to numbers, because numbers are one of the only things in this world that people agree universally as far as numbers are true. So a good phrase to say whenever you're building trust is, let's do the math. You want to sell your home for $200,000, let's do the math and see what this looks like. You think you need to redo your kitchen before we'll be able to sell the home? Let's do the math. So as you're building trust, if that's a phrase that you can work in there, it's a really good way to show that you're the expert, but also it's kind of a universal, hey, we all agree on math. We may not all agree that you should sell your house right now, but we're going to agree that this is the math and this is what it looks like. So as you're trying to build trust, that can be a good tool to use. Another thing that we're going to rank here is the person's trust in your product or company. Again, on the Ben Kinney system of selling, it's not always talking about real estate. So he uses the example of selling Apple products. I've got an Apple computer, I have an Apple phone, I have Apple earpods, I have an Apple watch. I trust the Apple products. I would be on a scale of 1 to 10 whenever I'm ranking my trust in the company, a 10. So when we go back to, does the person trust the ED Waters Network or our company? We're actually really almost asking, does the person trust real estate agents? And the reason that we're asking that is because we're all kind of identified in this network. It's like I would ask, do you trust the bank or do you trust your bank? Well, it's kind of like, it's all the same banking industry and you're all lumped together. So this is a big one, especially if you're working for sell by owners or cold leads or expired listings. Earning the person's trust for your industry and for the ED Waters network is really, really important. So here's some questions to ask yourself to be able to figure out, does this person trust our company and the product of using a real estate agent? Number one, how would they describe your company or industry? That's a really yucky question to ask, and I don't recommend that you actually ask it out loud, but you can tell during a listing appointment if people trust your industry, if they trust your company that is real estate. What do they think your company stands for? To me, this is a really great reason that we bring our the listing booklet, the ED Waters listing booklet, on all appointments that we go on, because it does talk about you know, our values, our cores, the type of people we hire, and who we work with. So a good way to earn trust is just by talking about your own personal values and why you joined the team. That can be a really good segment of a listing appointment that very likely people you're competing against aren't going to talk about. They're all going to talk about numbers and commission, and that's very standard. But if you can get the person that you're meeting with to trust your company, and as you a byproduct, you're heads and tails above your competition on that. So a few other questions to ask one. So you can rank, remember we're ranking this. Does the person trust my company? Do they understand what your company stands for? Do they think that your company fits with their values or beliefs? So again, this is going to be back to mirror matching. Does this person have family? Is this really important to them? Well, ED Waters Network loves family. It is really important to us. So it's being able to pick out what their values are and then discussing not only how your values match that, but how your company's values match that. So let's try to think of an example. If I'm working with for sale by owners, they a lot of times do not trust the real estate industry. They think they can do it on their own. They don't need us. So finding a way to build trust with that person, and maybe it's an investor and they haven't had to sell their properties with an investment. You know, they just stick them online and they sell in a second. Explaining to an investor that ED Waters Network loves investments, a lot of us are involved in our own personal investments, is a really good way to earn trust and show that we're the experts in the industry that we're offering to help them with. So again, your ranking, do they trust our company on a scale of 1 to 10? Just give it a number. So moving on. The final segment that you're going to rank on your listing appointment is your emotional connection. And I saved it for last because it's absolutely the most important of everything that we're ranking. People buy with emotion and justify with logic. Even those of us that are really, really high D and just want to get things done and that's all that matters, we buy with emotion and we justify with logic. It's kind of like, I don't know how many of you have Beachbody or any of the other, you know, workout systems. If I'm scrolling through and I'm about to pick out a workout, I'm way more likely to choose someone that looks like the body type that I would like to have than somebody that doesn't. So if I want to be strong and I want to build muscle, I'm going to choose emotionally to follow an instructor that looks how I want to look. And that's the same all across the board, from buying a house to buying clothes or whatever. People make purchase decisions based totally on emotion, and then they justify them with logic. So whenever you're asking yourself, did I have an emotional connection with this person that I just met with? Here's some questions to ask. Number one, can you see your client visualizing the change that you're basically selling them? Can they visualize putting their house on the market? Can they visualize what making more than they thought they were going to make means to them? So they're going to start saying things and using questions and talking amongst themselves in a way that you'll know that they've emotionally connected with this. So let's just use an example of wall color. You might be on a listing appointment and somebody might say something along the lines of, I was really thinking it might lighten up the place. I really like cream. I was thinking I was going to paint all my walls like an off-white. I love boho theme. That's a very different emotional connection to the idea of selling than if someone says, I was researching homes and it seems like most homes sell better with gray paint. Do you think that's true? What do you think a buyer's going to like? That's a very different emotional connection and emotional conversation. One is they're doing something for others. The other one is, I wanted to paint my house cream because that's what I liked, and I'm still really emotionally connected to my house. So make sure that you're buying into the cues that people are using so that you can justify in your head where they're at on the scale of being ready to sell their home and how you're going to best help them. So a few other questions you can ask yourself to see if there's an emotional connection here. You can say, Have I convinced them that this is a logical decision? So here's an example. My husband and I are both on the same wavelength that we want to retire early. He also really, really loves cars. He also, because we're on the same wavelength here, has never purchased more than an $8,000 car. So he does all his research, he finds stuff that's cool and fast and whatever, but we kind of have a budget because we don't want to have a big car payment. So emotionally, he wants to buy a car. He looks at all these fast supercars, whatever. But logically, he knows we're not actually going to do that. We're not going to buy it right now because it doesn't fit with our goals. So emotionally, whenever you're connecting with people and you're figuring out where they're at on this spectrum, they may emotionally be bought in. They may be ready to go to put their house on the market, but they're going to call you with logic. They're going to call you and say, hey, we want to sell our house. We want to buy a new house. And we understand that it makes sense. So the ability to flip someone from an emotional decision to a logical decision is where you're actually going to start getting listings and winning listing appointments. So 2 other questions that you can ask yourself to tell where they're at on this scale of a 1 to 10 on a listing appointment, if you're connected emotionally, might be, is this a realistic decision that we can make today? If so, what's the next step? So is this something that we could do right now? Does it make sense realistically? I'm there emotionally, but does it make sense? And are all the decision makers present? So listing appointment 101, it does you no good to meet with me without my husband because we're making this decision together. Sometimes people even say, oh yeah, you can just meet with me. My husband's on board with whatever I say. They still have to go back to their husband and explain what you said, how you said it. There's going to be questions asked, and I'm not there to answer the questions anymore. Now the other person is. So it's really important that both decision makers are present so you can gauge their emotional connection. And then finally, what's the next step? You need to leave them with that taste in their mouth of what are we doing next? What's the next plan? I don't like to leave listing appointments without listing paperwork signed, or I've hit send on the Dotloop account because I got it all set up before I came, and I'm talking about pictures. Hey, Michelle's going to call you tomorrow to set up pictures. It's making sure that emotionally I'm guiding them to their next steps because they're ready to go emotionally. Logically, we just have to say, here's what's next, here's what's next, here's what's next. So now what? Now on your little sheet of paper, you've got a bunch of different rankings, or your emotional connection. Do they trust you? Do they trust your company? What are their needs and what's their excitement level? So you're marking down, if you have all 7s, if you've ranked all of these, hey, we're at a 7 to 10, you're ready to go. They're going to list their house. If you're going through here and they're excited and they have a high need, but they don't really trust you yet, maybe you ranked trust a 5, you'll know that in your follow-up conversations, you need to work on trust. So it's a good way in your head. A lot of times we leave listing appointments and go, oh, I think I'm good, but I'm not really sure. It could be a yes, could be a no. This is a really good way to help you understand what you need to work on as you're leaving these listing appointments.